Good evening, welcome to Political Capital. I'm Karabo Letlhatlha. This is the intersection of politics and money. South Africa has been on fluid political grounds following the resignation of former President Jacob Zuma. Now the incumbent, the new President Cyril Ramaphosa, wants to break with the past and usher in a new dawn. Yesterday he announced a cabinet reshuffle that left many amongst us wondering where the new dawn begins and where the past ends. But before we get into the political analysis of his cabinet reshuffle, you will never believe the papers.
It's the cabinet reshuffle in South Africa that has stolen the headlines. Ramaphosa's cabinet shake-up, so says MoneyWeb. Ramaphosa's hand-picked cabinet is expected to help him on his New Dawn plan that seeks to root out rampant corruption and patronage, grow the economy, reduce inequality and create jobs, and trim South Africa's bloated cabinet. That's a lot of wishes. Times Live says cabinet reshuffle comes at a high price. Some of Ramaphosa's appointments are causing alarm and indicate that he did not have a completely free hand in choosing the executive. Ramaphosa compromises on cabinet but prioritises the economy, so says News 24. The rest is a disastrous compromise. He will really have to explain this one to the nation. In The Citizen, the headline is Malema on cabinet reshuffle. Opposition MP Julius Malema says President Ramaphosa looks like a defeated man after having to accept a few allegedly tainted names in his cabinet. Unexpected compromises and President Cyril Ramaphosa's much-awaited cabinet reshuffle have led opposition parties to express doubt that he has not been able to clear out all the ministers with questionable records in government.
But first, let's recap who's in and who's out.
When Cyril Ramaphosa gave up his deputy president's spot, it reflected the behind-the-scenes deal-making at the elective conference in December. In stepped the December kingmaker and former Mpumalanga Premier David Mabuza. The minister in the presidency is Ramaphosa's rival at that conference, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma. Most people thought Finance Minister Malusi Gigaba wasn't going to last long, and they were right. Remarkably, in stepped the highly respected and pragmatic Letlhatlha, the man who was fired from the post by former President Jacob Zuma just over 2 years ago. He must hope second time lucky. Another dead certainty was that the embattled mining minister, Mosebenzi Dzwani, was going to walk. He did, and in came Gwede Mantashe, the former head of the National Union of Mine Workers, who has deep roots in the industry and is certainly someone the employers can negotiate with. Lynn Brown is out as Public Enterprises Minister, and in steps the hard-headed and competent former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. The man was fired amid acrimony and market chaos in March. You can be sure he wants to vindicate himself by doing a good job and sorting out South Africa's loss-making state-owned enterprises. David Mahlobo is out as Energy Minister, and there is a good chance the nuclear deal will go with him. He is replaced by Cabinet veteran Jeff Radebe. Fikile Mbalula bit the dust as Police Minister, and flamboyant former Minister Beckett Cele, the man who introduced the hard line and military ranks to the force, returns. The king is back, a police officer told me last night. Joe Maswanganye was fired as Transport Minister, and in steps the heavyweight former Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande. Higher Education saw Hlengiwe Mkhize fired in favour of Naledi Pandor. Many people saw her as a potential deputy president, but instead she'll be sorting out the funding crisis at the universities. Faith Mutambi goes as Public Service and Administration Minister to be replaced by the efficient former Information Minister Ayanda Tlodlo.
The wave of change that's engulfed South Africa has certainly not gone without unintended consequences, especially one felt by South Africa's troubled mining sector. There is a string of mines across the country that's about to go into business rescue, largely because their owners, the Gupta brothers, have upped and left and have been cut off by the banks. Aviwe Mtila visited one of these mines in Kroonfontein in Mpumalanga, and this is his report. Aviwe, take it away.
Thank you, Karabo, and hello to the viewers at home. I'm Aviwe Mtila, and I'm at Kroonfontein, home to the Gupta-owned Optimum coal mine. Now, workers here have down tools, complaining of lack of payment, among other issues. Now, with each passing day, the situation intensifies with a heavy police presence, while workers threaten to take stern action against the company. Fire and fury on the picket line. More than 100 workers at Koornfontein Mine near Witbank in Mpumalanga vent their frustration. Some of them haven't been paid since November.
We're here to support the crowd. It's been a while that we haven't received money now. As you can see what's happening now, it's from last week. I mean, how are we going to survive at the end of the day if you don't you work without pay?
We've been struggling with these things of non-payment from November last year. Sometimes the pay come late. On the 4th December, the whole December we did not get paid.
Zwelinzima is the branch secretary here. He represents thousands of coal miners here.
There are other issues like, as you might be aware, that Bank of Baroda, which is the only bank that was doing business with Optimum or Gupta Oakbay, is now going to move away out of South Africa. So that will tell you that there is going to be no way that they will be able to pay or to run this company.
Koornfontein is part of the Optimum operation that supplies nearby Komati power station with millions of tons of coal. The operation also exports more than 1 million tons of coal a year through Richards Bay. It is a chain of business very sensitive to non-payment of contracts. Welcome Kumalo has been working here for the last 15 years.
The thing is, this mine is different from those olden days. We are struggling. Suppliers are not being paid. Workers are not being paid. It's dark. We don't have even a direction as to what is happening.
The reason behind it all is the unraveling of the Gupta mining empire that once promised tens of thousands of jobs and now can't promise to pay at the end of the month. We approach management here. Well, we've tried numerous attempts to get past security and talk to the management of Optimum Coal Mine, but all those attempts proved fruitless. The Koornfontein Mine is merely one of a string of Gupta mining operations seeking business rescue. As well as Koornfontein and the Optimum operations there is Tegeta Resources, mining services outfit JIC Mining, Tembekile Mining, Kebrastal and X-Force. By far, the most significant on the list is Siva Uranium and Gold in Hartbeesfontein, near Klerksdorp in South Africa's Northwest Province. The Gupta-owned holding company Oakbay, which owns 74%, called it South Africa's top uranium mine when it listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in November 2014. In the run-up to this, it had employed 800 more people to bring the workforce up to 1,000. The mine has 30 years' worth of new order mining rights and was in the prime position to supply up to 1,100 tons of uranium a year if the South African nuclear power deal had gone ahead. Atul Gupta once boasted Oakbay would create 100,000 new jobs in South Africa. This is now highly unlikely, if not impossible. The business rescuers have their work cut out.
The funds are available already to pay the salaries, and that was the most emotive issue that happened between Friday and today. The funds have been secured, the funds are in the bank, and the processes are currently underway to pay all the employees, and in particular the Optimum Mine, which all the motion was all about.
The parent company Oakbay has little to say. What is happening here at Koornfontein is not merely a blow to mining. It is also a stab to the heart of the long-suffering community that lives nearby. A 20-minute drive away from Optimum Coal Mine is the town of Witbank. Now, the livelihoods of many here depend on the mining industry. This clothing shop has been in business for 17 years. The looming closure of nearby mines like Koornfontein could spell the beginning of the end.
So I think as Witbank as a whole, we depend on miners. Because even our parents, they do work there in the mine, so we have to go to school. So if they close the mine, it's going to be a big problem here in Witbank, because we have to eat, we have to bath, we have to go to school. So it's going to be a lot of problem.
The people who live here are equally insecure. It could be a sad end to mines like Koornfontein.
So who is David Mabuza, South Africa's new deputy president, and why should we all be afraid? Zwelinzima Vavi sits down with me right after this break. Welcome back to Political Capital, the intersection of money and politics. Now, when Cyril Ramaphosa took over the reins of the party and of the state, he made a promise that he will usher in a new dawn. But after he announced his cabinet last night, it left many wondering where the new dawn begins and where the past ends. I sat down with a man who used to be in the know in the ANC tripartite politics, Zwelinzima Vavi, who is now the General Secretary of South Africa's Federation of Trade Unions. Let's first solicit your reaction to the late night cabinet reshuffle that we saw, unlike the previous cabinet reshuffles, which were also done at night.
Yeah, midnight things. But on a serious note, I think the cabinet reshuffle more like reflected the state of the ANC. What you saw in the conference of infections, of divisions, of paralysis is now being transferred to the state. And the president is obliged, and I don't think he have options, but to make an executive, a cabinet, that will reflect those divisions. Because that's the reality of your ANC today. And I think that's what he was trying to do. I think he tried to get rid of the ministers that are obviously condemned by the public protector as liars, the courts as liars. And but where he needed to go further, he couldn't. So we're quite disappointed. But we are not surprised. He had no choice, for example, but to appoint David Mabuza as his deputy. If he was to sideline him, that will cause problems in the ANC. But is this good for South Africa? Definitely not. David Mabuza have been followed by very serious allegations throughout his tenure as a premier and the chairperson of the ANC in Mpumalanga. 15 whistleblowers, for example, have disappeared and or buried in the province. Some of these people we know by names, including the allegations that they were making. Not a single arrest, not a single conviction, at least. And it's all because the law and order have collapsed, and the system of patronage and fear has replaced civil rights of individuals. And there's always allegations of corruptions around him. At some point there were stories that I know he denied that he lost 14 million rands
in his house.
That sounds like money laundering to me, and anybody will say 14 million. What was it doing in the house in hard cash? And those type of stories. I mean, if you read the book of Mzilikazi Wa Africa, look at somebody coming forward to say, "I've been offered R1 million to get rid of you." If you read the affidavit signed by warlords and killers from Zimbabwe, from Mozambique, all of them making claims that he eliminates political opponents and using them. These things have never been investigated, I accept. He has always denied all of them. But, man, is that a new direction South Africa wants to take?
Let's speak about that man, the man in charge, Cyril Ramaphosa. You call him an old wine in a new bottle. You really don't believe that he will bring about change. But when some people look at the dynamics of the top six, they say that it's split evenly between those that want to change policy and those that wants to grab power. and they pretty much put David Mabuza and Ace Magashule in the power-grabbing category. Do you agree?
I can never trust David Mabuza. In fact, we fear the day something happened to Ramaphosa tomorrow, and he then assume the responsibility of being the president. And we fear that what has happened in Mpumalanga to whistleblowers will now be happening from Nelspruit, Ngomazi, right to Cape Town.
But the man himself said that he was poisoned, that, you know, they did try on his life.
But
so
there are people who are also saying that that's his main weapon. He poisons people. And so, I mean, who doesn't know all of those stories in this country? Everybody have known that. And that's why we believe that there is a paralysis. There will be a paralysis. The organization and the country can never rely on just but one person. No matter how brilliant that individual is, to clean the mess that have happened in our country, more so the mess that that affects ordinary people, unbelievable levels of poverty. You need a team of absolutely dedicated individuals who are all united with a common cause.
To serve.
Not to hide skeletons, but to serve and to push and push. I don't think we have that in South Africa under the ANC today.
Mr. Vavi, we've had a lot of events happening in a very short space of time. I mean, SONA was just delivered only a couple of days ago. There was budget in between. And in that budget, they announced a 1 percentage point increase in VAT. Is the new ANC government of Cyril Ramaphosa making us, the everyday common man, pay for sins incurred from the past of Jacob Zuma and their own mismanagement by raising the value-added tax?
Absolutely. We're being made to pay for the mistakes committed by others, more so by the ANC since 1994, because we warned that this is not sustainable. But more so, there have been even more dramatic levels of chaos and mistake in the past 9 years, which the entire ANC have sought to defend and to protect. And now they're turning around to make us the fall guys. We're now supposed to carry the can for mistakes that they have committed. And that's why we are so angry against the VAT increase. It punishes the poor. And more so, we wanted redistribution of wealth from the rich to the poor. This one redistribute wealth from the poor to the poor, basically. It leaves the people who can afford to pay more taxes untouched. It doesn't touch the corporate taxes. It doesn't look at the taxes of the upper end. And it doesn't introduce a wealth tax. It doesn't introduce a solidarity tax. It doesn't introduce any of those kind of taxes. It relies again on a blunt instrument, the VAT, which we all know is a regressive tax, which will hurt the poor more than it will hurt the rich. And it's a soft target for government. It's the vulnerable again.
In the same vein, I'll ask you, so what statement does it make about the ANC when you look at someone like Bathabile Dlamini being moved from social development and into the Ministry of Women?
Exactly. Bathabile Dlamini almost collapsed the whole system. And it took opposition parties, civil society organizations running to courts and to rescue the situation.
Women are saying that the ANC is not showing them respect if
It's
that's the
an
kind
insult.
of minister
This
that
is
they
an
give them.
insult to women. I mean, you're saying the main beneficiaries of the social grant system were to be women. They are pensioners. They are single-headed households, most of them led by women. And she almost destroyed everything that keeps them going every end of the month. There you are. You're saying you are now going to be in charge of your affairs. It's a damn insult.
I like this cluster way that we are looking at these different cabinet moves. So in that same vein, when you look at the security cluster, which has seemed to be a continuous problem for the African National Congress, do you think, from what we've seen as the appointment of Bheki Cele, that they know how to speak and appreciate the tactics of being a police officer and speaking that language in order to ensure law and order? Again, we have a non-police person who's been appointed there as a political head. And Bheki Cele was not exactly known for results. He was known for utterances when he was police commissioner about how you must have your stomach in, chest out, shoot to kill. But I'm not sure what it delivered. His reappointment, well, him coming back into the ministry, what does that say about the security cluster?
Well, the security cluster have been a battleground for Jacob Zuma in particular. He wanted to control that as part of an elaborate strategy to keep out of the door prison or the doors of prison. And Fikile Mbalula, frankly, is not a cabinet material. Every time he spoke in public, all of us cringe, all of us have a good laughter, and all of us see how bad things have fallen apart. And so not many people will cry. He's a nice guy, but look, not a cabinet material, quite obviously. Secondly, Bheki Cele left the position of a commissioner of police under the cloud of controversy. There was an issue of 100 billion rands for rent. There were politics about whether he did this in order to eat himself, or he was seen to be the disturbance in the eating schemes of the president and the family. But he did make a mistake. He signed the documents without reading them at the bonnet, on the top of the bonnet of the car, and he paid the price. I can only hope that he learned from that. Secondly, he certainly militarized the police when the Constitution is categorical that the police are going to be a service and not a military force. And the barrettes, the aggressive style that he employed turned a lot of human rights activists off. And I'm sure they now are quite worried that he's coming back. But let's give him the point. I'm told that when he was there, because of his hands-on approach, and perhaps because of being seen to be in the roadblocks and being seen in the forefront and taking the punches, sort of lifted the morale of the police, and they believed, and that's very important. When people are in a team, they must believe that they are capable of winning it.
The coach must be believable.
The coach must be believable. I think he has that. And
Leader.
I think that's why you see lots of excitement. There was a lot of media campaign of people saying, bring back Cele. Because people believe that he will do something about it. And that's very important psychologically.
But that for me brings up another important conversation. Now, when you have someone like Bheki Cele who's just been appointed Minister of Police, and let's not forget what he said only a couple of weeks ago when he was in KZN. He said something about the SG of the ANC. He said, EP imali yobisi, meaning where is the money from the Friede Dairy Farm project?
The organic meat.
So is one going after the other here? Is the ANC investigating itself? And do you hope that under Bheki Cele that we will actually see the wheels of justice turning? Because for a long time, accountability and the ineptness of the police was the talking point.
What have discredited the leaders of the ANC is is that they perceived to be acting factionally and not to protect justice across the board. We can only hope that he will know that he can't afford to play factional politics with the ministry of critical nature as that of the police. So if he must pursue the SG, he have to. If you have to pursue the deputy president, we believe that he have a reason to pursue the deputy president, by the way. It shouldn't be for factional reason. It must be because the 15 people who were killed in Mpumalanga deserve justice. And that justice has been denied to them up to this moment. And precisely because of the tactics of the strong men and factional battles inside that ends up shielding the strong men and make the vulnerable more vulnerable. I think that he will act, and I have a reason that I think he will act.
Thank you very much for being with us right here on CNBC Africa for Political Capital. We're back on your screens this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Central African Time. Till then, good evening.